Hello again, Tom Tradup from All Israel News, and along with Joel Rosenberg, our founder and editor-in-chief. And Joel, you have an especially urgent message for evangelicals watching because of a situation involving having to move Christians into a safer area than where they are now. Tell us about that.
Yeah, Tom, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Look, there's a very urgent, very urgent situation developing in Gaza with Palestinian Christians in northern Gaza. Now, obviously, every person in Gaza has been in danger over the last 5 or 6 weeks as Hamas has set into motion this horrible genocidal attack and Israel's inevitable response. And I think Israel has been responsible in its response for more than a month, urging Palestinians, all Palestinians in the north of Gaza, particularly in and around Gaza City, which is the base camp of the Hamas terror operations, to move south. Palestinians need to move south out of harm's way, out of the combat zone, and Israel has created corridors, safe corridors to get to the south. They have allowed in, enormous numbers of trucks of food and clean water, medical supplies, and so forth. So that's good. However, earlier today, I started getting a wave of alerts and calls and text messages from Christians, particularly Palestinian Christians, but also Christians who are very familiar with what's happening on the ground in Gaza, to say that there's only about 1,000 Christians in Gaza at all at this point of history, and almost all of them are sheltering in 3 churches in and around Gaza City. Now, those are very identifiable church buildings. The Israeli military knows that they're there. They know Palestinian Christians are sheltering there, but they have ordered those Christians in those 3 churches now to move south, that it's time, that they've sort of been patient, but now everybody has to move out because the intensity of the war is continuing. The problem is this, Tom. The problem is the Palestinian Christians do not want to move south. Why? Because they know the ancient history of this region. They know the modern history of this region. They know the very recent history in which, just in Syria and Iraq, right, ISIS murdered every Christian they could find, to a point where Congress, even President Obama at the time, and the UN identified it and declared this was a genocide, a formal, actual genocide against Christians. And Palestinian Christian leaders tell me the Palestinian Christians in northern Gaza do not want to go south because there is no shelter there. There are no churches, and they believe that they will be slaughtered, they will be beheaded, they will be burned alive. Their women, wives and daughters will be raped. And they will all be slaughtered, and there will be no more Christians. And I have supported the policy of Israel. I think it's very good and compassionate to encourage everybody to move south. But when suddenly everybody said, "Oh my gosh, the Christians can't move south," that caught my ear. Why is it happening right now, Tom? The reason is because the Israeli army has said now, okay, you have 5 days to clear out of those churches and head south. And I don't think the Israeli army thinks they're doing anything wrong, and I don't think they're doing something wrong. But what I'm saying is, it's not the same for a Palestinian Muslim to move south compared to a Palestinian Christian to move south. We know what happens to the Christians. And so I began I wrote a column on Friday afternoon and began alerting senior officials in the Israeli government that I know, listen, this is a grave situation. Please intervene. What I'm asking for is for all 1,000 Palestinian Christians in those 3 churches to be evacuated by the Israeli military and brought to the West Bank. Now, admittedly, most of them want to move someplace else, but right now we just have to get them out of harm's way and not to the south, where I think they will, in fact, face genocide.
Well, and to your point, Joel, I had an opportunity following the massive March for Israel in Washington this week to interview several of the emergency ambulance drivers from Israel who were at the march, and one of them was telling me a specific story about coming upon a Palestinian Christian who was working close to the border, and Hamas people arrived there and said, we're going to shoot you, or they threatened him and made an obvious move to take his life. And he said, please don't hurt me. He had a 5-year-old boy with him. Don't hurt me. I'm not, I'm a Palestinian. And they said, but you're colluding with the Israelis, and shot him dead right in front of his own son. So the danger, as you point out, is very, very real.
Yeah. Well, I didn't even know that you had that story, but this is consistent with every way that Christians have been treated by ISIS or ISIS-like organizations. And Hamas has shown that that is exactly who they are. And so this will probably be, uploaded on Saturday or Sunday. You and I are speaking on Friday evening, because again, I just think this is a disconnect between the Israeli civilian and military leadership, who has been doing the right thing and believes it's doing the right thing by helping the Christians get to a safe place. But I think the Palestinian Christian leaders that I'm talking to are saying, I appreciate that, but that is not going to be the case. And I think this is not an issue of Israel trying to do something wrong, but it has to be informed and alerted, educated to the risk. And, God forbid, and I say this both as a Christian and an Israeli citizen, I think Israel doesn't want to inadvertently create a genocidal situation, right? By trying to move them south.
Yes.
And thinking that you're doing the right thing because that's what you've been doing with everybody, that'll make the situation better. And I think it's good that Christians, those of us who live in Israel, but also those around who are hearing you and I talk about this and can be praying and interceding, that Israel could be alerted and aware and change tactics, even though the strategy is the same: get everybody to a safe place. There are only about 1,300 Christians in the West Bank, at least born again evangelical Christians. There are others who are of other denominations and backgrounds, historic denominations. And I'm not saying that all 1,000 that are in northern Gaza are necessarily born again evangelical Christians. Many are Greek Orthodox or Syrian Orthodox or Roman Catholic. But but anyone who claims the name of Christ is in danger, because Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad and all radical, violent extremists who are Islamists see Christians as pagans, as heathens, as idolaters, and therefore not only subject to death, but worthy of death. Like they believe it's their Allah given mission to kill. So this is a critical situation, and this is one of the reasons all Israel news and all Arab news exists, to pick up intelligence that, maybe the Jerusalem Post or, CNN almost certainly, or others might not think about. If we can get others to cover this story also, I will be working on that in the coming days and coming hours. But I'm grateful that we could be bringing this story to everybody and do what we can to get the word out for prayer. Jesus has his eye on his flock, and we need to defend our brothers and sisters.
Absolutely. And the Christians all over the world are praying not only for Israel, but now with this scary information that you're getting out, evangelicals particularly will be praying ceaselessly on behalf of the people that we're hoping will be evacuated properly and get to the West Bank. You, along that line, had an opportunity this week, Joel, to meet with one of the most prominent evangelicals in the world, Franklin Graham of Samaritan's Purse. Tell us a little bit about that conversation.
Yeah, well, so for the last 5 weeks or more, I've been encouraging Christian leaders, particularly evangelical leaders, to come and, on a solidarity trip. Franklin Graham is one of the ones I had written to and to encourage. And but obviously, Christian leaders, it's hard to turn on a dime, right? We're coming up on Thanksgiving, coming up on Christmas. And it's not that, so the 100% response I've gotten back from people, from Christian leaders all over the United States is, I want to come. I want to show solidarity. I want to see what's happening. But I actually have commitments. I don't know how to alter, right? We are people who say our yes is yes and our no is no. And if you get, but to my great encouragement, I was not the only one. The others were encouraging Franklin to come, and he did. And so he arrived here on Monday and stayed through Thursday, and I really appreciate it. I don't know Franklin personally. I knew his father, and actually saw him in the final months of Reverend Billy Graham's life, because I'm very close to Ann Graham Lotz, and we've done a lot of work together in ministry over the years. And Ann took me up to her father's home there in the beautiful woods of North Carolina, and he was infirm and he was on oxygen, but we had time to sit together and talk and share the scriptures and pray together, and it just was very moving to me.
Wonderful.
But for whatever reason, I had never met Franklin, but I'm very grateful, and I'm also grateful to Franklin, not just for coming, but because it wasn't exactly easy. Samaritan's Purse does emergency relief all over the planet, but where it's known in the Middle East is for doing work in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in other Arab Muslim countries. And that's not easy to do. To be an evangelical Christian, especially an evangelist like Franklin, that's incredibly sensitive. And so he has not personally been here for many years. Although, as one of the things, Franklin and I got time to sit together and talk and get to know each other and pray together and talk about the situation, what I'm seeing, what he's seeing. One of the things I said is, you got saved here, didn't you? He goes, yeah, actually, after growing up in the home of Ruth and Billy Graham, I didn't. I was actually, we all know he was a rebel. He wrote a famous book called Rebel with a Cause.
Yes.
And he didn't come to faith until, he was in his 20s, later 20s, I think. And he did so on the Mount of Olives, actually at a hotel that used to be called the Intercontinental. And so anyway, all that to say, I was grateful that he came and it wasn't just he didn't just stop by. He went to the border. He went to one of the Israeli communities, one of the kibbutzes that were just devastated, where people were just slaughtered by Hamas. And he walked through the blood-stained floors. He saw the bullet pockmarked walls and the torched and destroyed buildings, homes, but he also met with hostage families. Franklin met with Israeli officials to be briefed on the magnitude of what's happening. He met with first responders. He met with soldiers. He met with both Israeli Jewish and Israeli Arab pastors and ministry leaders. Even spoke at a church locally. Had gatherings of people. It was full time. Plus, he was bringing humanitarian relief. He brought a whole plane load of equipment, and he committed to, I think, Samaritan's Purse, is going to buy 14 or 15 ambulances for Israel's ambulance service, which were destroyed or severely damaged by Hamas. So I loved the time I got to spend with him, and we broke the story on All Israel News. I don't know why other media here didn't cover it. It seems like a big deal. He's the first prominent evangelical leader to come and one that hadn't been here for a long time. And finally, we did, I think, 3 different stories on different angles of the trip. One more piece, Tom, was that one of the things that I my impression, he didn't say this to me, but my impression was that he was somewhat hesitant to formally, or at least publicly, meet with Israeli leaders. He wanted it to be either a Christian trip doing Christian relief work, and didn't want to maybe complicate it with the Arab Muslim world. But I encouraged him, if you have an opportunity, you're one of the few people who can sit down with the Prime Minister of Israel and maybe pray for him and just hear his perspective and be an encouragement from the Word of God. And actually, that door did open, and he did go. And Franklin spent a good deal of time with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and Netanyahu actually released pictures and a statement, which we covered. So that is not normal. That we have not seen other evangelical leaders have the ability to change their plans and come. It meant a lot for the Christian community, the Messianic Jewish community here, that he came and met not just with Jews, but with Arab Christians as well.
I had an opportunity myself. I was blessed to be able to go on a trip with Samaritan's Purse a few years ago. They were dealing with the aftermath of the Ebola outbreak in Liberia. And they really do put boots on the ground. They bring medical equipment. As you said, they've committed to replacing a number of these ambulances that were destroyed in the Hamas attacks. And reading the stories on All Israel News about Franklin Graham hugging hostage families, about him praying when he sees the bullets in the walls and the aftermath of the attacks, really does make it a much more down-to-earth human story than if it were something you'd read on the AP or, as you said, CNN, even if they were going to cover it. And it's one of the reasons, I know our time is limited, we have to go, but I would just like to say it's one of the reasons that All Israel News is so important for evangelicals around the world. And I would encourage anybody who's watching us, anybody who reads regularly, to consider just there are opportunities on the website to just click and donate a few dollars or make a commitment to make a monthly donation to support this kind of news, because it really is truly unique in the world of journalism, but particularly in the Middle East. And with both All Arab News and All Israel News, you really have touched a lodestone that needed so much to be done. And we salute you for that. And we're so happy we got to spend this time with you.
Well, thank you so much. And we're grateful that you're on this team and getting the word out, particularly based not here. It's important that we have, you're based in Dallas, and of course you're vice president for news and talk at Salem Radio, the America's biggest and most listened to Christian radio network. And I think having people that aren't here and are operating in different time zones is important, right? Because even if we keep reporting till midnight here, that's only 5 p.m. Eastern, and it's only 2 p.m. in the Pacific time zone. So that's a lot of things that are happening that we're not able to cover. So that's something we need to expand on. And therefore we do need the financial resources. But I'm grateful also for this particular one. You were doing some travel, and I'm glad that you're back, and I'm glad that you're able to do these videos with us, because I think it's so important for people to understand what's happening, and therefore how to pray. Yes, pray for the peace of Jerusalem, pray for a complete and decisive victory for Israel, pray for compassion on both sides. But now people know, okay, wow, I need to pray that the Israeli government will figure out a way and actually will move and evacuate all these Christians out of Gaza into the West Bank. Maybe those people will go someplace now to the U.S., Canada, Europe. That's a different issue. The question right now is, let's get them out of harm's way. And harm's way doesn't mean just the Israeli offensive. It means the Hamas genocide trap that they're in. So I'm glad that we could do this video and get that word out. And I encourage people to pray without ceasing. There should be no ceasefire in our battle of prayer.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joel Rosenberg, and thank you for watching. And we encourage you to just stay plugged into All Israel News for the latest breaking stories. All right, let me just stop that. I think that went very well.